We basically went from a system that you can find anything to now a system that if the metadata is not there and you use natural language search, where you'll most likely find what you need. So that's profound. That's a big, profound change in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
I said to you, our emotional ROI is very high. It's the feeling like that you get when you do anything.
Hello and welcome everybody to today's episode of The Digital Advantage. My name's Heidi. I'm so happy to be here with Jeff Ross and Don Browning from Chewy to talk about a universal struggle that we're all familiar with, content chaos. So in case you're not familiar, Chewy's mission is to be the most trusted and convenient destination for pet parents and partners everywhere. And I can personally attest to that because I've been a customer of Chewy for a very long time. Absolutely love the brand and am super honored to be here with both of you. Welcome, guys. Thanks so much for being here.
Sure. Thanks for having us. Yeah.
Awesome. So Jeff Ross is the Director of Post-Production and Studio Martech, and Don Browning is the Associate Director of Media Content Services. So let's start with you guys telling us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So our journeys are a little different than the journey that most people get into e-commerce, which is come from a broadcast background. As you know, a lot of companies have taken a lot of their content creation and brought it internally so they can control their brand, their story, and outwardly align with what they're trying to accomplish. My story started in sports TV for 20 years as a video editor to start with. My career came to a crossroads at the end of 2020, like a lot of people's careers did. At the end of the pandemic, people were downsizing. I was part of that process. And then Chewy came along, and I was like, you know what? I like pets a lot. I have 2 dogs. I could still create content. And so the original role I was hired was for Director of Post-Production for Chewy. Basically the same kind of job, but not for broadcast. So video editing, motion graphics, color, audio production. What was different was the photo retouching part, not really my background, although I do take a lot of pictures in my life. So convincing them that would be a good thing was part of it. Where we lacked, though, when I first got hired was the resources to create that content in a media asset management system for our video and a DAM that was highly functional to support our PDP and our store. And our content creation also. And so when I got hired, I asked my leader when she hired me, hey, I understand the goal of the job, but how are we going to solve these things? And she said, that's where you come in. So I said, okay, if we do that, then I need to create a department that is media content services. And what that means is how do we handle all those assets on a daily and day in and day out basis? And how do we support the content creators to be able to find those assets in order to reach our customers in a more profound, personalized way? So then I brought Don in, and he could tell you a little bit about his story.
Sure. Well, yes, Jeff brought me in. We worked together at NBC in broadcasting, and I built a media manager group there that from scratch as well. So that's what we had to do at Chewy once I got there. And so I brought my experience doing a lot of things like editing and video production, things like that, into this department and kind of modeled it after the larger department that we had had at NBC to address more of the photo production work and video production work. And we built the MAM and then eventually the DAM, which is what we're here to talk about today.
Awesome. Well, first of all, amazing backgrounds, the pivot to Chewy, not a bad place to go. Well, like you said, love pets, and I am brand loyal to Chewy myself, so love to have you all as a customer. But pretty phenomenal, the backgrounds that you both had set you up to really make some transformational changes at Chewy. So we'll get into let's get into the topic for today. So we're talking about content chaos, and so obviously there's been a proliferation of content. You look at personalization, digital strategies, AI are all driving just this absolute explosion of content. Right. And it's one of the biggest challenges out there to be able to manage. I think you guys, when you came to us, you already had 2.5 million assets and growing all the time. So tell me about, Jeff, the tipping point that you all hit with your legacy system and knowing that you needed something better to conquer this challenge.
Yeah, that's a good question about how we ended up here. I think what you find sometimes, and it's not anybody's fault generally, is that when you bring on technology, some people feel like, oh, the technology will solve it. But what they don't realize is you actually need humans also to help solve it. And so when this came to me and we were looking at, hey, how are we going to keep up with what you're talking about? How are we going to personalize for our customers, which is Chewy's bread and butter is really our customer service. And so when you hear things around the office about that idea and about how well we reach our customers, we were way behind in terms of our technology. And so when Don and I got involved, it became very apparent that the platform that we were on was getting too expensive. It was way under supported. It had no team on it, essentially. It was, I think Don used the term ghost ship at one point, like who is actually running this thing? And the other part was, what do we do to solve this? Because the content creators, which were averaging about, I think it was about 10 a day on the platform, which for a company our size is very small.
Yeah.
And so is it worth it? Is it worth what we were doing? And then I went to Don and said, he's an expert in managing systems of media content, hence the name of his organization. Yeah. And I said, listen, I know you did this before, and this is not our background. We know nothing about this. Do you think you could learn a little bit in order to do this? And he's like a bit of a mad scientist when it comes to these ideas. And he's like, yeah, like a challenge. One thing that we have done really well for a decade, even when we weren't at Chewy, was we love the idea of a challenge. Mm-hmm. So then I went to you, and then the rest is kind of history. So
I said, no way.
Yeah, you made a really good point at the beginning of the things that people often miss, especially when they have a technology that's unadopted, is they think that making a switch is going to solve everything. But if you don't have the people, process, and technology, to your point, that are all together, and you're not putting the right pieces in place holistically to make it work, you're ultimately going to fail again. And you had the foresight and understanding to know that you needed Don to take the lead to solve that. And I've been to the Chewy office. I've seen the room where your operation sits. It's phenomenal. Can you tell us about, like, when Jeff presented you with that challenge? Tell us your thought process and how you approach taking on something so significant.
Well, I mean, I had to educate myself, for one, because I was so focused on video production and collecting assets for the media asset management system. And we had just launched that, by the way, when he came to me and said, okay, now let's do this other one, which is actually enterprise-wide, as opposed to just a production, support tool. First thing was, educate myself. Second thing was to start doing research on what was out there. And, I've been preaching metadata for a long time. And that was the primary target I wanted to hit with whatever platform we were going to go with. It was important to me to be able to support metadata and get away from this older folder-based mindset that is just, a slog. Once you realize how fast you can get to something and reveal that to multiple people and share it, from a single resource. So a lot of those things were what, kind of drove us to Bynder. We looked at, prior to, we had demos. We did 4 or 5 demos and meetings and things like that, but we looked at pretty much everything. And it kept leading us back to Bynder because of some of those things, like being able to incorporate the search tool and some of the other pieces that you guys demoed for us that were so impressive. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, I was there for part of the process. Our teams got to meet a number of times. Was there a particular moment in the process where you're like, yeah, like you mentioned some of the ways in which Bynder works with metadata, getting away from folder structures and more modern. I'm sure you were looking for a more modern UI and more configurability out of the box. Was there a moment that you were like, okay, like this is the one, we're putting all our chips on this table and we got to go for it?
I think it was that in particular, when we were looking at all the usability of the platform. Like I was saying, with the lack of users on the previous platform, it just made it challenging. It was overwhelming. It's almost like talking to somebody who's just not very technical and saying, hey, can you email? Can you search on the internet? It's like talking to my mother who's in her 80s at this point, and although she's willing to try, it's overwhelming, right? That's the feeling that I had to keep like in the back of my head when it came to answering these things. It was the driving force to, the first part was not just how do we serve our store, which is the most important part. It was how do we get more people on the platform and embrace it. And that was the biggest challenge. And so when we saw what your UI was different than a lot of the other companies we were looking at, it was a lot more user friendly. And so we knew we had a PR project on our hands also, which wasn't just, hey, Don had to convince our IT department and our storefront people and, oh God, our national brands people and et cetera, that we need to re-engineer how we serve assets to our store. Is we needed to convince content people that we are thinking about them first and foremost also. And because we work in the marketing department. So we're going to hear from them first, right? And so when we looked at all these platforms, that was the one tipping point, which was which one can we get people on faster? Yeah. Which one will they feel most comfortable with on their own with some training, which we would provide and you guys would provide, but not have to hold everybody's hand every single day or listen to the amount of complaints that we were hearing about the dam. Yeah. And as you know, dam is used in several different terms, to several different ways.
Right.
And we were hearing it in the most negative ways all the time, whether it was from our IT folks or our content people.
Everybody.
So that's how it started with you guys.
Yeah. Got it. Thank you for that. That's I think finding the balance between the end user experience and the downstream delivery is always a tough one. I'm sure from your perspective with metadata, it's something that you guys are thinking about all the time.
Yeah, just saying the word metadata would, be too much for people. We're in the technology business, so we just naturally kind of see the language that's being spoken and understand how these things work when we, interact with them. But individuals who don't do that and have a normal life, when they see this, they become intimidated and then reject it or whatever. So education, having a campaign to educate people was a big part of what we wanted to do for the introduction of this product.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, Carrie on our team is a library science. You worked very closely with her. I think Taylor on your team as well.
Right.
How is that like? How big of a factor was that in helping to the migration implementation process? Having people so familiar with metadata structures.
Very helpful. I mean, having a good taxonomy is important to that type of work, and structuring all that is imperative to having a good library that you can communicate with, because we started out with, all those assets. Individuals who put those assets into the system were the only resources you had to find those assets. Without metadata that associates the asset to the information you're looking for, you can't find anything. Yeah. And so having somebody who understands that on your team, and of course having Taylor on our team, was very valuable, because they spoke the same language and we could build out something that everybody in each of those little groups could share information with us and build out the taxonomy for the entire system. So I'm in marketing, some specialty piece of marketing. My taxonomy aligns with that information. I'm going to go off too far into all the technical, but
you're good.
It's it aligns you to what it is that you're interested in.
Yeah.
So that was the best part.
Yeah, we basically went to somebody's messy house and rearranged, like, if you ever have one, there's people out there that exist that really come in and like organize you.
Yeah.
we were the organizers.
Right.
I mean, we basically went to the messy house and tried to figure out where the shoes go, where the shirts go, where those toys go, where does your music collection go.
Was it like the Netflix show, or does this bring you joy when you?
Right. Are you going to? Do you need this again? It's always the question. And so it wasn't because Chewy was a bad company or a dysfunctional company, not at all. It's because Chewy's success was so fast.
Yeah.
And exploded. And so there wasn't a lot of time to put the resources into these things. And someone wasn't able to keep their eye on some of this stuff. And our timing ended up being perfect when we came to the company because we were able to ask these questions.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you want that cute Halloween costume for your dog. We can't find that for you. We're going to have to recreate it and shoot it again.
Yeah.
And they're like, what?
Yeah.
And we're like, what about our dam?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. And so that's where we got to this whole idea, which was we can't find these things. And this description is very accurate in our old facility. I mean, the first couple of months that we were there, we were finding like hard drives everywhere that had media on it. We had a server that was pretty messy.
Yeah.
Had to be cleaned up first. Like there was a whole process to get us here.
Yeah.
So.
What I know, you guys had, 2.5 million assets. Personalization is important. Channels are important. Generative AI more and more is becoming a factor.
Yeah.
Content continues to grow. So before you kind of tell me about how overwhelming of a problem was that to solve, and what did you see as the most important outcomes of getting that right and being able to actually manage the complexity of all of your content?
To do that manually, you're talking about 6 media managers working 40 hours a week just for the material, just for the assets that are online from our store would have been a couple of years. If we include the legacy material, we're talking, probably triple that in terms of years. So it's a daunting task, and it's very difficult to get all that metadata in there that actually makes sense to everyone, so they can't do that. So using AI and organizing things in a particular fashion reduces all that time, and using AI to actually make those tags and add those tags to the assets was a huge step in tackling all of that. We're at a point now where all those 2.5 million assets have been tagged.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you guys were also up against, if I recall, a pretty strict timeline because you had a code freeze before the holiday season. You want to make sure that
year.
If you were gonna be ready for that holiday, we had to finish by, I think, end of October or something like that.
Yeah, after the project was approved and our CTO, we ran into him, I want to say it was about 2 months into the project. And he pulled us aside and asked us how it's going. And we said, it's going well. We feel like we're moving down the right path. And he said, well, what about those assets? We said, well, we're manually tagging them. And he immediately stopped on and He's like, how's that going to be sustainable? We're like, we're working on that. And he said, have you thought about X, Y, and Z? And of course, we've ran every scenario that we could possibly think of. And to tag, as Don was saying, we're basically like, as we're chewing off this end is growing this way. So it's like, how do you continue to as soon as you keep going, we're adding all these assets, 14,000 assets a month, I think it is. Yeah. And so
they're not all the same type of asset either. Right. That's the biggest hurdle for all this stuff, is because you're talking about medical information for pet, care and things like that, combined with ingredients for dog food or, the size of a collar. I mean, it is a wide variety of assets, and they all have a unique descriptive piece of information about that is discerning to the individuals who are looking for it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's you've said that to me before. Your Chewy's a different business. You think of all of the breed, all of the different animals, all the breeds within it. And then one of the things that had come up early on is being able to identify pet expressions. Not something that Bynder had at the time that you guys implemented, but we had also just launched our Bynder Labs. And so your need for that was an influence in partnering with our team to explore that as a possibility. Can you tell me a little bit about that process of
Sure.
your need to working with our team to actually seeing kind of prototypes and betas of that.
Yeah, I think the first part started with that idea alone, which is when content creators were searching our library of assets, they wanted to do it in a way that they would on maybe Google or something, where it was a little bit wider in terms of what they would find, where ours was very particular in terms of how a pet behaves. We did that in partnership with our pet team. It wasn't just something that Don and I were like, oh, this dog, it acts a certain way. Let's just call it this. No, it was really direct and purposeful. So that way we could find these things, right? So for us, that's important because when you're listening to teams in across the company and they're like, hey, we need to do Golden Retriever Day. We're like, okay, how are we going to unlock that idea if we don't tag every single Golden Retriever in our library that we currently have, or they're going to go buy stock somewhere else, which is expensive.
Yeah.
And so why not tap into our resources to find that? Now, in terms of expressions, every pet is different in how they behave. You have 2 animals at home. I have 2. They both are distinctly different. They're like children in terms of their behavior. Mm-hmm. So how do you capture that in taxonomy? Yeah. And so that was the first thing we started to talk about as we were breaking this down. And Don's team we have a metadata manager that so when we built the team, we did it in 3 or 4 deliberate ways. One are the people that would tag the assets and manage the assets. One would be overseeing the taxonomy and metadata. One would be over the platform, and one would be engineering the workflows amongst them. Don overseeing the whole entire operation. So it was very purposeful in terms of how you solve and unlock these things that never existed before. So when you get to this expression thing, then you get the whole team in a room, and it's like not like a meeting you've ever been in,
right?
In terms of that. And then you would talk to your team, and then that information would come back to Bynder.
Yeah. That's the best part, or the most important part, not always the best part, but the more important part whenever we work with manufacturers and platforms and things like that is having a direct access to the people who, support and develop those platforms, because it is so unique. And we do have these fine details. We try to approach it in a broad sense that Chewy it's not just for Chewy. This is be a good general idea for all, of your customers. We don't want to make a pet-centric, dam per se, because like I said before, we have so many different types of assets. Mm-hmm. We need some general approach most of the time as well. But every so often, there are those little intricate pieces that I'm sure you can relate to other companies. But, it's not just expressions, it's the length of the hair. It's the color of the hair. Golden Retriever, okay, they're all golden. No, they're not. There are all sorts of things. And then once you get into equine, and we have supplies for horses and all sorts of animals, And so those are different requirements, and therefore you need that flexibility.
Yeah.
And a platform that has some flexibility and gives us the control to make adjustments to some of that is so important.
Let me ask you, kind of going back to we've talked about this before, so it's not the first time certainly that I've heard you guys talk about the importance of being very close to your technology partners. You participate in the early access program for Agentic AI. Can you tell me a little bit about what the process was like for you and where you're at with it now?
Sure. It was great to be invited into it first off, so we appreciate that, because it helps when you get to that point. You don't want to be surprised, right?
Yeah.
Hey, we built this cool thing for you, and it does nothing that you want.
Right.
So
that is the last thing any technology company wants to hear from a customer. So
felt like we were really there with the developing team and able to give them, I think, useful feedback, especially for what our needs are. But again, we went back to that point of, okay, we don't want to just be just me. It's good to make the platform you work on successful. It's good to be helpful. So the most important piece of that, though, was that they listened to us, right? As we were going through the process, you could tell that your team had some ideas, and they were going a certain direction with them. But as we brought up things, you could see that they were going, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, that's a great idea. Let's think about using it in this fashion. And, the image generation part of it is actually excellent. There's some really good capabilities in that. And we were kind of surprised by it because we played with a lot of AI. And so some of that actually came out really well. What happens is that we have the studio where they shoot, the front of the box, the back of the box, all these bits and pieces that make up a PDP page, right? You get your main image and all the carousel images below it. So that's pretty straightforward. Where the generative and some of the AI applications are going to be very useful are in the areas where we need, 6 images that are this size, 7 images that are that size, and that goes to, wide variety of things like emails or banners or whatever, And some individual today has to cut all those out, drop out the background, add a shadow, create a different size for each one of those locations. So it's very time consuming. We use third-party providers to do some of that work. But imagine being able to just take that one piece, send it through this AI, process, and give me my 50 different sizes with a different type of shadow or transparency in a different format.
Yeah.
And we're talking about minutes as opposed to a week, or some of these SLAs are more than a week, depending on how intricate that is. That's where that's going to be powerful and important.
It's amazing. And when you think about the kind of the AI plus inevitable human part of it, but being able to find productivity gains with AI in that way, like, are there things that you think about that the time that person will save from AI? Like, there are other things that you're already like, nope, they're spoken for. These are the things that we can't get to right now. And
people still need to make a decision.
Yeah.
Does that look right?
Yeah.
Is this what I want to say? Is this where it should go? AI is not making that decision. So being able to have time to make that decision, think about that, especially when you've got to deliver so many elements. It already is a breakthrough in terms of that, and finding new things to do, with that time.
So the cutting out the manual task part, but you will never replace the human element of review, decision, making sure it's compliant, that it came out well, and that's really responsible AI, right?
Right, and there may be areas where that does come in handy, and having that first QC through the AI so that you don't have to think about that part. Imagine being able to pick the colors, the size of the font, and all those other things that you need to check throughout every document that's created. Have the AI take care of that part, and then you make the
transformation.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is like, then it's like this cycle of like, we're innovating, so we're gonna, easier to enrich, easier to create versions of transformation. So the content chaos will continue and continue to make the dam and the system of record to be foundational to what you're doing.
Well, that was the cool part, but the even cooler part is the focus on that part of organizing all of those assets and adding metadata to them, and giving you that ability in AI, in the platform itself is a great approach.
Yeah.
And seeing that grow is going to be really fascinating over the next years or so.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad that you had the chance to participate. There's going to be more to come on early access, of different things. So let's talk a little bit about the user experience, and let's stick on AI for a minute. You all are using AI search. We've talked a little bit about how that's benefited you, but why don't you tell me a little bit about what you're hearing from your users and some of the good outcomes it's driving for Chewy?
I mean, we basically went from a system that you couldn't find anything to your system where you could find some things, but our metadata wasn't complete yet. So now a system that if the metadata is not there and you use natural language search, where you'll most likely find what you need. So that's profound. That's a big, profound change in a short amount of time.
Right.
I mean, I think when you're in a project like this, you're not sure how you're going to get to the end of it, or you're not sure how it's going to resonate with your user group. But it's pretty incredible. I know we talked a minute ago about how to change people's mind in terms of, hey, we have a new platform, where we now have to do PR about this platform, and then get them on it so they feel comfortable on it, and it becomes part of their routine, part of their work, right? And so when you hear the head of healthcare walk into a meeting, and she says something to my boss's boss, the chief brand officer, and she says, "Hey, this new Bynder thing, here it's pretty cool." And we're like, and her response was, "Yeah, Jeff and Don's team have really put this project together. It's pretty amazing." She's like, "Yeah, my team is loving this thing."
Awesome.
And she runs all of healthcare. So,
Yeah, it's amazing, very validating, and
right.
it makes me think of, well, you guys knew this was coming, but when we sat together in your office this spring, we were talking about ROI.
Yeah.
And there's a number of ways you can look at it, right? Like you guys have made a phenomenal investment in Chewy Studios. I took 3 tours while I was there. It's the best thing I've ever seen.
I think you were there just to see if you see any of the pet stars. That was your
the
goal,
pet
right?
stars, like the pet green room, forget about it. I want to live there. I wish I lived near there so my dogs could be stars. But when we were talking about ROI, you kind of paused and you coined this incredible term that I think is branded with stickers these days, and we talk about all the time. And tell us what that was.
Yeah, so I know you guys we all love numbers. Our bosses love numbers. They want to know what's the return on our investment with this platform or this technology. And because we were so early into it, I mean, yes, we could say, hey, this was a cost-saving measure in terms of overall platform, which it was. But to me, that's not the full story, right? The full story is that people are actually on the platform. And they feel good about it. And so you asked me this question, and I think my initial response was to pause for a second, because it wasn't just a numbers answer, it was a feeling answer. And so I said to you, our emotional ROI is very high. And you said, "Ooh, what is?" I don't even. I think I blacked out during the whole thing.
I think we all did. We were like, "Oh my God!"
And you're like, "What does that mean exactly?" And you're like, and then you stopped me a couple minutes later. You're like, "What do you mean by that?" And I said, it's the feeling like that you get when you do anything. I mean, if you're into something and perhaps you purchase something, you want to feel good about that purchase, right? You want to feel good about that experience. Or if you travel somewhere or you do something in life, it doesn't even have to be a cost thing.
Yeah.
If you show up to an event, you want that emotional ROI to feel good.
Yeah.
And so I think companies don't focus on that enough. We do. I don't know why I feel this way about Chewy is so different, because I know we've talked about this, but Chewy is founded on this customer service idea where we go to the end of the earth for our customers. Mm-hmm. And I would tell any business to do this, because you should unlock that first. Because you could sell the greatest thing in the world, but if you don't give people the feeling that they're getting something for it in terms of how they feel about when they're using it or doing it, then you're not going to be that successful, regardless of what it unlocks.
Yep.
And so, yeah, the emotional ROI, to me, I don't know why that hit me in that moment, but I just feel very strongly about it, that we've created something that people feel good about, and that we're there for. And Don's team has done an incredible job supporting the platform, from office hours to Slack communications, where I read Slack every single day, and there's a couple channels. There's a Bynder community channel for Chewy people. And they're like, "Hey, I can't figure this out," or "Hey, how do I do this?" And at his team, it's like having customer service on call during office hours, where they could find out what that's like. I'm sure you could talk more about like how you guys came up with that to be able to support this. It's a little bit of Chewy customer service, right?
It is a little bit, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but it's almost a requirement. You have to be able to do that, or otherwise it won't be successful. If people don't know how to operate something, it's useless.
Yeah.
So
totally.
It's a very simple, straightforward, process. Make yourself available, informed people available, which is important, and then provide that service when people need it.
Tell me, you guys, one of the things you all do for your self-service is you use Bynder's content experience for user community. I think you have a training or enablement guide within the DAM. And I want to say it says, "Do it your damn self." Is that
exactly
true?
what it is. Yes.
Guilty.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Our Taylor, again, she came up with that one. And I was like, I love it. Let's do that. That's great. So things like that are very helpful. We have we have all sorts of little things like that. Like Joaquin built a tagging guide. And so he had all the examples from the DAM, all those assets, and then an example of what that tag would be for that specific type of image.
Yep.
And so when you're going through and trying to add so many I mean, we've got, I don't know, hundreds of thousands, it seems like, unique elements in the taxonomy that we have to identify. So having an example as an explanation of why that example is there is so helpful. And it's built into the DAM itself.
Yeah.
And the brand guide, things like that,
Yeah.
you know. The new look too, being able to build the pages,
Yeah.
you know, like you do like Squarespace or something
Yeah.
like that, makes it fun as well. So it's not just, you know, boring, here's some text and a piece and then blog, blah, blah, blah. It actually has some visual impact to it as well. So we're selling information to people internally. It's kind of like what we're doing.
Yeah, I think that with CX user community, the brand books and enablement are two of the first use cases that we see. And thank you also for the feedback. The landing pages launched about a year ago and really customer influence, because we know we're working with creatives and marketers, and your Bynder portal is your brand.
Right.
And we knew how important it was to be able to customize that. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Something that you have said, whatever analogy you want to use, popular kid in school, you know, the person at the dance that everyone wants to dance with. There's such demand from the Chewy employee base to get on to Bynder, but you can't keep up with it because so many people want the positive feedback, the accolades. Like, how do you look at the continued growth of users in the platform, just kind of knowing, you know, all the productivity gains you get, the emotional ROI you're getting? How do you guys look at the future and how you continue to grow the users on the DAM?
Yeah, I would say, to your point, it was such a crossroads for us. We went from a very challenging project, a hot potato per se of a project that nobody really wanted to touch. And it came to a boiling point where we were trying to move to you guys at one point, that we called the Great Tomatoes Meeting, meaning that we basically took tomatoes to our faces the entire meeting while people were challenging us, unhappy with the idea, feeling they were being not heard and left out, when everything that we had communicated was way before that meeting even happened. And so we had to really regroup that idea, to say, hey, how can we rethink this idea? How can we change our message slightly? And Kara and I, my boss and I, had a meeting. It was around the holidays in 2023, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And she said, hey, let's rethink how we're going to do this. I'm challenging you to come up with the new PR message to some degree. And so Don and I got in a room, probably over several lunches, and decided that we're just not saying what the most important parts were, which was the metadata part, which is, to your question, which unlocks like the user group experience. Yeah. And so, yeah, we went from the kid that nobody wanted to talk to at school or didn't want to hear our ideas and kept asking to be heard, to the popular kid now that everybody wants to talk to. And how can, it's about a couple things. It's about earning trust. It's about delivering results. These are our operating principles at Chewy. These are part of what we do.
So thinking about the journey and how you got here, obviously it seems like the tomatoes on face meeting was pretty brutal. But here you are now, and with a lot of success, emotional ROI. When you look back at that and the influence that you had to make and the detractors that you had, how do you feel about that?
There's a certain like calmness that comes over you, I think, when you accomplish something that you hear positive stuff about. Because the timeline got so truncated at one point that we went from a year project to an 8-month project, I think it ended. Yeah, a 7-month project.
Yeah.
Where we were like, okay, how are we going to get to the MVP stage in 7 months? And we had to really figure out what that was going to look like, because we needed to remove ourselves from the other platform.
Yeah.
Bring your platform on and re-engineer the entire thing through our IT and store. So it was an enormous project. And it's even incredible to say out loud to myself and think about how we were able to get there at times. It's not because of us. It's because of the people. It's partially because of our vision, but it's really because of the people that executed it and believed in us more than anything, right?
Yeah.
At your vision and guidance, though. And so it's rare to see people as humble as the two of you for what you've accomplished. So I will, give you the recognition. Bynder has given you the recognition. You guys won the newcomer award and the spotlight award for newcomers, which is amazing. Congratulations. How did it feel? I know you said you don't need recognition, but Don, how did it feel to get that recognition?
From you?
Well, anywhere. It could be from us, from people who are coming up to you in the hallways saying like, what you guys pulled off is phenomenal.
I was just going to say, we really haven't stopped yet to absorb that because it's one project, after that.
Yeah.
Because that was almost a triage delivery. We kept the patient alive and we delivered what we needed to make it happen in the MVP, but it continues to evolve. There's always, I tell everybody, the dam is a living, breathing thing. And it's not, here we made it, it's all good. Like that was the problem we had prior to this, was that they did that. So it's always great to hear, great job. Everybody loves that.
Yeah.
But it's also good to hear, hey, we got something else for you because that was so cool.
Yeah.
We want you to try this as well. So we love that.
Yeah, and we're appreciative of you guys recognizing our efforts, and the award is a lovely. It gives us a chance to say to our teams, hey guys, it's not just us that notices what we're doing, it's our partners that notice what we're doing.
Yeah.
And so to us, that's lovely, and we appreciate you guys saying thank you. And I think there's a bigger story to tell. It doesn't just impact what we're doing, it impacts what we're doing as partners together.
Yeah.
I know you've brought up some of the feedback we've provided to help your business get better, and some of the stuff that you've provided back to us in terms of service. So it goes both ways.
Yeah.
I know sometimes it's about selling a product, but it's what's that product going to do, and how do you work with your partners and do it in a way that is natural and it feels good for both sides.
Yep.
And so I think that's a little bit of our X factor, is that we get both sides of the business, right? And your experience really allows us to unlock some of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's it truly has been a great partnership when, we got to come on site with you and see where everything happens. When we look at, as the services side, when we look at all of the opportunities that you have and you're like, yeah, we just can't keep up with, we know all these things we can do.
Right.
How do you think about the next 6 months, the next year? It's always an always-on program. Do you have a roadmap of sorts where you're like, this is what we want to have, we look at a year from now, where you want to be and what else what other use cases or users or you would have wanted to have rolled out a year from now?
Yeah, we try to stay on a big picture kind of process, because when you get too deep in the details, because things shift, and as you gain more knowledge of the actual problem that you need to solve, things vary and change and things like that. So you try to keep a main vision of what it is that you're trying to achieve. And so we're focused on, making things available, easy to find, and fast. And so just focusing on that, and then what the solutions are to provide that, or how you kind of narrow that down. And we have more details in our actual timeline, but you try to keep the big picture in mind as you're picking and choosing those things. And it varies from almost day to day sometimes.
I would say we spend so much time on photo assets that video is becoming a bigger pull as we head into the next few years. We have millions of hours of video assets all over the place, like our messy house was. Yeah. It's messy for video.
Yeah.
We already started creating our video brand library, Chewy video brand library, like we have a Chewy photo library.
Yep.
So, but video is way different. It's a way different. It's a way different animal.
Yeah.
Heidi. So there you go.
Awesome. All right. Well, I've taken so much of your time. It's been amazing. Is there anything before we wrap up that we didn't get to that you want to make sure you share?
You've done an amazing job.
Yes.
No.
Stop it. No, I'm just kidding.
And go ahead.
And
no,
go
I think for us, it's just continuing to build our partnership and our brands together, really staying close on what's next.
Yeah.
And then using our team, which we think is an amazing resource to really flex what you guys are doing in upcoming releases, giving us that early on and onset look at things has been helpful to give that feedback that Don's team's been able to provide you guys right away.
Yeah.
In real time, some of the time.
Yeah.
And I think that the partnership is the strength of some of the story. I know that's one thing we haven't really talked about, which is we've talked about how we were able to execute on our vision, but some of that secret sauce has been the relationship we've had together.
Yeah.
So I would say thank you guys. It's been an amazing start to a great relationship.
Well, thank you back. I think when you have the opportunity to work with customers as collaborative and open as you guys, and the brand and just what we know you're trying to achieve, it's a privilege for us to be able to partner in that way with you. So thank you back. Thank you both so much for being here. I really appreciate the partnership and the time we got to spend and all the insights that you shared today.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for being here today, for listening to the Digital Advantage podcast. We'll see you next time.